Hello, my beautiful collective. Welcome to the first installment of the Healing Podcast with uGogo Mphemba. I am Nongceba Spesihle Manzana, a psychic medium and healer who has dedicated her life to not only channeling for and uplifting humanity, but also bringing you guys the type of healing that allows you to not only live your best lives, but to live your best lives as the best version of yourselves. I inherit this healing gift from my great-grandmother on father's side, uGogo Mphemba. Intombi Mphemba umlilo emanzini ngamabele uvuthe. She's the one who allows me to connect with your deceased loved ones in order to channel messages of guidance, messages of encouragement, of wisdom, and motivation for you guys on your life journey. Okay, so I'm a little bit nervous today because of course we are filming episode 1 of the podcast, but also uMakhulu wanted me to go all natural with my hair. She said episode 1 is all about me. You're going to be sharing my life story, my life journey ngisaphila emhlabeni, in order for the collective to gain an understanding of why I am the type of healer that I am. And just human nature, guys. I was like, no, Makhulu, I don't want to have my natural hair out. I usually have my hair up in a scarf, in a headscarf, or in a protective style. So this was like, oh my goodness, you're pushing me out of my comfort zone. But yeah, what do you guys think? It's a little bit different. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel so vulnerable, actually. I don't know. What do you think of this look, right? For those of you who've seen me on TikTok, on the television screen, I always have my hair up in something. So what do you think about this look? It's not make sure, but today's episode is not about me. Like uMakhulu said, it's all about her, right? We're going to be sharing istori sakhe ukuthi nje azabe uGogo Mphemba okwazi ukufika ke manje kumzukulwana wakhe athi okay Ntombi, let's go and let's heal, let's use these cards, let's use these charms and get people to a better place kusuka phi. So I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. A few disclaimers before we begin, right? Guys, I am based in South Africa. Okay, ngakho-ke I will go into my indigenous languages. So I will speak English, right, the majority of the time. For those of you who are not South African, and some of you who are South African and who don't understand Nguni languages. But guys, I am a Xhosa woman, proudly so. I was raised in Zululand. So yes, I definitely will speak Xhosa. I definitely will speak Zulu. Okay, my episodes throughout this podcast. All right, so take it as a challenge, guys, to learn, to teach yourselves, find out what certain things mean. Also, kiki in the comments, okay, with one another. Nifundisane nje. Let's embody the spirit. Mphemba yidlozi elifundisayo. She's very big on education. She shares a lot of wisdom with us. You guys are in for a treat. Good podcast. Yay. But yeah, let's embody her spirit and let's teach each other. Let's learn from one another. Let's not be afraid to ask for clarity, especially in areas where we feel there's a bit of ambiguity. Okay, we African spirituality space. I think it's very important for us to now remove the cloud and remove the fog and just get crystal clear on what's going on, guys, and what is legit and what is hoo-ha, right? What is forgery? What is false? What is a facade, right? And what is truly real when it comes to us understanding our spirituality as Africans. But this is not only focused on Africans, right? It's just that obviously uMakhulu, being an African woman, she focuses a lot within the African space, but this applies to spirituality in general, not just African spirituality. 2, uMakhulu is not trying to teach you guys science, not at all, okay? So you will see a lot of scientific themes pop up right, in the episodes throughout this podcast. She uses science to show you guys ukuthi it proves spirituality, okay, to show you guys ukuthi all these things that science proves, the realities that science proves, are also proving spirituality. So she's going to correlate all of that for us, okay? So please don't feel intimidated. Listen to the explanations that she gives. Another thing, guys, teach yourselves to find out more and research izinto. Umakhulu is not a spoon feeder. She expects you to find out a little bit about everything, right, that affects you, that affects your life path, right, as a spirit having a human experience, a physical experience in this physical realm. Okay. Also, I would like to just ask you guys to please keep the respect. Okay, let's respect one another, even when you interact within the comments. Please consider ukuthi you're speaking to another human being who has spirit guides, ancestors, an entire divine team that walks with them. Okay, so let's just keep things respectful. Let's keep the space high vibrational, guys. Okay, and yeah, let's just make it a pleasant learning environment, right? And an environment where we are truly empowered to, once again, be the best versions of ourselves and essentially live our best lives. Okay, so today is all about umakhulu. Today is all about uGogo Mphemba. Okay, she has put up a picture for you guys. I'll also put up a picture, Lana, so that you can see. And we're going to be sharing, or I'm going to be sharing her life journey, her life experience, right? In order to correlate ukuthi why is she the type of healer that she is, all right? Her life journey has a lot to do with why she is the way that she is, right, when it comes to healing. Those of you who've had sessions with her, I think you have an idea of what I'm talking about, okay? So, funny enough, she wants me to touch on her surname thing, because there are people, right, abang Mphemba, and they spell Mphemba Mphembe, right? And so they kind of are confused. Okay, Mphemba. So, mina, I grew up in Zululand. And when I went to the Eastern Cape to go have imbeleko done and whatnot, and basically in the early days of me building this relationship with Mphemba, because now I had a calling and I accepted the calling. Guys, let me take a bit of a tangent, okay? Phela I get to see this. Listen, when you have a spiritual gift that needs to work and heal people, that is something that you're born with. It's not something you're going to discover. Ooh, I have a spiritual gift. No. Okay. A spiritual gift is actually more intense when you are younger. And then as ukula, iba less intense, right? As your chakras start to interact with more people and you start to now acquire blockages because you're exchanging energy back and forth with other human beings, okay? Whereas in your child state, your chakras are still very high vibrational, okay? So, as ukula, your life experience, right? The things you go through, the challenges you go through, the experiences you have, empilweni prepare you for acceptance of your calling. Your ancestors and guides, especially your guiding ancestor, then calls you at a later stage in life after they feel like you are now ready to take on the responsibility that comes with healing abantu. Okay. So you could never discover that you have a spiritual gift and that's the reason why you don't have a job, or that's the reason why you don't have money. Don't fall for those tricks, guys. Okay. I don't know why I took that tangent. But anywho, Mphemba said the importance is in the meaning. Okay, Mphemba nje, it's because uphemba umlile emanzini ngamabele uvuthe. That means ukuthi leso siduko, right? That lineage is able to make something out of nothing, right? Imagine trying to rekindle a fire emanzini, or to make something out of a hopeless situation. Okay, so that is a trait that Mphemba have, right? Where ngampela there's loss of hope and the situation is bleak, they were able to bring renewed hope. They're able to encourage. They're able to heal, right? So the domain gamakhulu is in healing and teaching in terms of spirituality. So uphemba umlilo uvuthe, right? Uphemba umlilo ngamabele. Ibele is an organ that we use to nurture as women. So she does all of this through nurturing, right? As umakhulu, who's very nurturing, huge disciplinarian, but she's very, very nurturing. And so, guys, umayeti, the meaning is, or the importance is in the meaning. Uma ngithi mina Mphemba, ngithi uyaphemba, right? Now, when you say Mphemba, you're giving ownership ukuthi you are this person, Mphemba ngoba uyaphemba, right? Whereas when you say Mphembe, right, you're saying Mphembe, it is more of an action word. It's more of a doing word, right? So whereas Mphemba is more of an adjective, I'm describing uktini uguti, what is the quality of this person. All right, but manje, this adjective is also now becoming a noun ngoba phela sesimnika lona igama sekuyisiduko sakhe, right? Do you guys understand? So she just wanted you guys to know uguti, whether you refer to her as Mphemba or you refer to her as Mphembe, it is still the same. It is still the same. I'm not happy with the Xhosa spelling because they removed the H. EsiZulwini ke P without an H is a P. So mo spell Mphembe without an H kuba Mphembe. You know, it doesn't ayinambithisiseki in my opinion, right? But she wanted me to add the H, and I explained to her ukuthi makhulu, I struggle to say Mphembe, so I just say Mphemba. And she said it's absolutely fine. The majority of the people you're going to be healing will struggle to say Mphembe. They will say Mphemba, especially the non-African people that we heal. They will say Mphemba, right? So she said as long as the meaning is not lost, we're good to go. Okay, so uGogo Mphembe. Mphembe was born in Mpumalanga. She was born in Mpumalanga. And when she was a kid, they then moved to the Eastern Cape. So the village bebehlala kuyo in Mpumalanga was located next to Loskop Dam. Okay, that's all that she shared with me with regards to that. So she grew up. She became a teenager and a young lady. Ehlala kuphi Eastern Cape, right? And so she developed the language yakhona. And whatnot, and they just fit in as a family, right? In a very, very traditional Xhosa environment. Because remember, abantu abamnyama back in the day, ngeyikhathi zoMaMphemba 1980 bani at that time, they didn't have much, apartheid yayisa heavy futhi ngalezo ikhathi, so there was a lot of segregation. If you don't know what apartheid is, right, the formal way of pronouncing it, I believe, is apartheid. But tina city apartheid, we say apartheid in South Africa, okay, because we say it with the vigor that it came with apartheid. You say it with the pain, apartheid. So there was a lot of segregation at the time. And she was growing up to be a young lady, trying to make just the best out of a bitter life experience, really, when it came to segregation that was the main modus operandi here in South Africa. So, obviously, because of segregation, she only received Bantu education. Bantu education is where Black people are taught by Black people, and they are only taught a curriculum that is very limited, that limits them to certain work positions or professions, right? You could never be taught to be a doctor through Bantu education, right? That was reserved for the whites, right? The white people. So through Bantu education, Leo, she then qualified to become a teacher, an educator. okay, but also where in the Bantu space, okay. So in her becoming a teacher, she was teaching within the Bantu space, okay. The focus was on Abantu Abamnyama. But Mphemba, she had a spiritual gift. She was psychic, and she could not understand ukuthi what is going on with her. Now, umuntu onalesipho lesi esinaso, we tend to be very inquisitive. We tend to want to know a little bit about everything. And so she was observing the way that these white people would interact and carry themselves. And she was observing their mannerisms. Ukuthi, oh, when they eat ukudla, they eat with a fork and knife. They don't necessarily just go in with their hands. Interesting. Why? You know? On top of that, she's struggling with OCD. The OCD is a psychological condition where you are obsessed with a particular condition, right? Or the way that something has to be. So OCD, it differs, okay? Some people have mental OCD where like they keep thinking of the same thing over and over again, or they obsess over a particular thought, right? Ega Mphemba was focused on cleanliness. She had to be surrounded by cleanliness, right? She would get grossed out very easily. And so Leo, it sort of segregated her from people within the Bantu space. Colleagues, friends struggled to understand her. So she was very much a reserved lady who kept to herself. She was very quiet, and she received a lot of judgment for that, because it was very easy for Abantu to see her as uppity, right? To see her as umuntu phakeme, okay? So this is important because it is because of this mentality that she met her demise. So umakhulu, she used to travel by train, ukuya emsebenzini, and dala i-train nayo segregated. First class was observed for white people, and third class is for the Bantu people, right? And I think it's still like that today. I remember when I used to travel by train, in Safunda, Cape Town, I used to take first class, but in first class, that's where there were white people, and then in third class, there were no white people at all, you know, so yeah. Anywho, so I guess she used to just observe, you know, their mannerisms, oh, you know, the way that they dress, just things like that. And remember, Afrikaans people are descended from the Dutch, okay? The Dutch are, should I call them an ethnic group? But they are, or a racial group, they come from Europe, right? So they still kept a lot of their European mannerisms, okay, which Umakulu was observing. And some of them she liked, because when she looked at them, there was poise, and they displayed a certain level of neatness that she resonated with, you know, being a person who struggles with le OCD. But now living in an environment yasemakhaya where hygiene is not necessarily like held to a high standard, ngoba siphila through nature, you know. We use cow dung ukusinda izindlu zethu, like, you know, we poop in the bushes, you know, like, so moyo poopa nawe nomakhelwane de poopa, like, you gotta come across all of those things, you know. Because I remember we used to visit Gobogama, Paul Petersburg, Dumbe, and there was no toilet, guys. It's a modern day thing. There was no toilet. We had to go to the hill and poop there in the hill, you know. And so just living in that environment, she really struggled. But but she tried to fit in, and she tried to not be so visibly grossed out. So-ke hayi intombi yaMphemba iyazama, because phela kumele ufunde ukuphilisana nabantu, right? Regardless of your personal traits or izinto that are personal to you that other people don't know. You have to learn to read the room, and you have to learn ukuphilisana nabantu. So-ke she tried, right? Ukuthi-ke abe ulosisi wasemakhaya or uthisha. Okay, and to not be so visibly grossed out by her environment. So, fast forward, on her life journey as a young lady, she meets this man, this handsome man, right? And this man takes a liking to her. She's initially not interested, right? But she's also inquisitive. Okay, I don't get approached, I get shunned a lot. And so why is this guy interested in me? Like, what is going on, right? So then my great grandfather, she didn't know this at the time that he would be, he takes a liking to her, and he's persistent, right? He's persistent, and she sort of wants him to prove himself, Uguti, is he serious, Umakuluge being like, she has a seriousness to her, and she's an introvert, typical introvert, and she doesn't smile a lot. She doesn't have much to laugh and smile about, but she does every now and then, let out a smile, lapa na lapa. So okay, eventually this guy wins her over, and they begin dating, right? And as they're dating, he then begins to share more about himself, and he makes known to her that he was married. He was married, and he is now widowed because his wife passed on, right? And so then he also expressed his intention to remarry and to marry her, because he's infatuated with her at this point, and she was very pretty. She was a very dark, pretty lady. And so obviously Umakulu struggles with this whole idea of being a succeeding wife, right? But eventually Utando takes over, guys, and she agrees. And the boyfriend then Ayeguboge makes his intentions known. He's met a lady he wants to remarry, and he goes ahead and he remarries, regardless of ukuthi umndeni wakhe ama reservations abo athini around the situation. Okay, this is where now the problem starts for Mphemba. Okay, so my great-grandfather was married, like I said, and he had children with this lady. And now he is staying at his parents' house with his siblings. So my great-grandfather and his first wife, they had not moved out of the homestead. Back in the day, guys, abantu abadala babeshada bahlala ekhaya, and the man would just build uronda wakhe, or his separate flat, right? But in the homestead, okay? So he had not moved out of the homestead when he married Mphemba. So, fast forward, they get married, and now Mphemba is a young wife at this new homestead, and she is now living in this rondovel, this guy, right? Guyo le homestead, and kona la futhi kukhona nendlu yamadodakazi akhe, okay, her sisters-in-law, right? And then there's the main house where the parents are living. Now, those are my great-great-grandparents, her in-laws. I did share on TikTok a video where I traveled to that homestead where my great-great-grandparents lived. And Mphemba was living there with her in-laws. And I'm going to just maybe put a clip here for you guys, but you can go and check it out on TikTok.
I see trees of green,
a gift. I am glad.
And I think to myself,
Okay.
what a wonderful world.
This is the land of my ancestors. Gogo Mphemba ihlala pha.
I
So
see
that's where we're going.
skies are blue, clouds are white, the dark blessed day, dark sacred night, and I think to myself,
What's better for? Bebe ufo labo ronde.
what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky. Clouds over the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands,
Omong yung ronda lo.
saying how
Yinle.
you do. They're really saying I love
Yes.
you. I hear babies crying, I watch them grow. They'll know much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a very wonderful world. What
Yeah,
a very
I'm
wonderful world. What a very wonderful world. What a very wonderful world. Such a wonderful world. Oh, what a wonderful
Uyafika uMaMphemba, she's a young professional, right? And umayifika lana, the ladies, the husbands, sisters, they're not professional teachers, you know. They're just ladies who are trying to figure their lives out. They're obviously not married, bahlale ekhaya, you know. And so she is now being introduced to these people who now had a relationship with the previous wife and I guess a friendship with the previous wife, you know, but they were not with it. They were not happy with Mphemba being there. They were not happy with their brother having remarried, and they made her life miserable on purpose, right? Now, remember, Mphemba has OCD. And now she's a new young wife in this homestead. She wakes up in the morning. She's going to the kitchen. The kitchen was separate. She's going to the kitchen. Uyobeka amanzi. She's preparing breakfast. Uyahlamba. She's making amanzi for the elders, good bahlambe, for her husband. She's doing all of this, you know. And so we have Figa in this homestead, and she feels like there are certain improvements that she can make as a young makoti right at home. And Mphemba went at the mistake of introducing cutlery, guys. Cutlery. I'm not even kidding. When she told me this, I was just like, cutlery. So remember, she was observing abelungu, right? White people using all this cutlery, forks, knives, and things to eat. And so she wanted to introduce that, like as a young makoti, hey, let's try this out, you know. She was a young professional, uyahola, and she's buying cutlery, she's buying crockery, ama porcelain teacups, all those things, right? And it's so crazy. When we went to Dala, we could still see ama teacup abo, right? Like the porcelain cup there. And so she was introducing all these things that amadodakazi ke aglo muzi were not introducing, because I guess basekhaya, they don't really care much. I don't know what's going on. Obona, they're not affected by using the tin cups and the tin plates and just tin everything and, ukudla ngezandla and whatnot. And in doing all of this, trying to introduce something new and also having OCD, so uyahlamba ke uMaMphembe, uyahlamba at this point, ubeka amanzi ahlambe, twice a day. She then became the object of their abuse, of their bullying, because uzenza ngcono, according to them, uyasonyanya. Remember, she's also a professional teacher. So now uphakeme, because she's a professional teacher, siyamunyanyisa. So she needs to hlamba, she needs to bath the whole time around us, because she feels dirty around us. Our presence just makes her feel dirty, type of situation, which was never the case. Okay? Which was never the case. And so, she suffered this abuse from her husband's siblings, up to a point where the husband has had enough and he decides, Guti, I'm taking my wife and we're moving out of home. We're going to find a piece of land. I'm going to go to the chief, find a piece of land, and I'm going to build there so that my wife can live comfortably. Okay. These two guys were in love. They were in love. And for uMakhulu, it was a new, young, fresh love, right? So again, nangempela, he keeps his word, he moves, and again they go and they build, right? And it was quite far, lapha bakhe khona, because when you look at the difference today, to go to Israel Dala is the old homestead. You have to cross a stream, right, and go uphill and whatnot, and isendaweni nje engathi lihlathi. Whereas where they built uMakhulu, that's where now there are people. That's like where the majority of abantu bakhe khona. So again, now she's a young wife who now has her own house outside of the main homestead, and she's in love with her husband, and now it's baby making time, it's reproduction time, right? Now Nagoloko, they're moving, irks the siblings, the sisters, because the sisters to her husband, because why are you moving, Ekaya? Yeah, because you think you can't live with us. She can't live with us anymore. We discussed her. So now she has to go and get her own house. Also, them not understanding, Mphemba was young, guys, when she married her husband. Remember that he was widowed. He was married before. So there was a bit of an age gap between the two of them. Anywho, they begin to have kids. My grandfather comes through, right? Her firstborn son. Remember that the husband already has kids. Okay, so it's not like iy'ngane zakhe zokuqala. Okay, so she walked into a situation where she had to be a mom before she even gave birth to her husband's children. Okay, and she did a good job of it, because I remember one of her stepkids whom she raised, who passed on, she wrote an obituary and she included uMphemba in her obituary, and she said, I am here today because that lady raised me, right? So she wasn't, uMakhulu vele, she's not conceited, she's a very doting, loving, caring person, but she is a huge disciplinarian, and there was a reason why she was so strict to her kids. So that she has her son, and then a couple years later, she has another son, and then a couple years down the line, she has her daughter. So she has 3 kids by this man. Okay. And she's raising these kids. She's raising the husband's kids as well. So the husband's kids, they are between homes, right? She's receiving all kinds of bullying from these family members, in particular her husband's sisters, to the point where now the bullying becomes spiritual. Yes. Bamqaleki bamthakathe. Ubaba thakathe. Baba phose ngeichitho. Bathini. Eventually, her husband, my great-grandfather, becomes ill and he succumbs to his illness. And Mphemba is left widowed with 3 children, biological children to raise, and also abantwana behusband yakhe. Right. And this is at a time where she's young, she's in love with her husband. Husband passes on. Also, she had to leave her job. She had to leave her job to build umuzi manje, right? To reproduce, to have kids. So now she's not only widowed with 3 children, 3 mouths to feed, but she is also jobless. And this was now her reality. She is in her early 30s and she is widowed, right? Mphemba was loyal to a fault to her husband. She never cheated on him, esaphila, and she never remarried or entertained any type of advance from other men because she was receiving advances. And her rejecting those advances, Mayesho, also led now to a lot of bullying in terms of the community, because the sisters are perpetrating iphephandaba lokuthi uphakeme, she's uppity. And remember, when she moved into her own home, she was now free to buy the cutlery that she wants, the silverware that she wants, right? The crockery that she wants, right? And so my forks and knives. I did take a picture of izitsha fumana, all the silverware and things, when we were rebuilding indlu yakhe and bekugujwa lapha erondweni. If I do find those pictures, I'm going to insert them here for you guys. She had picture frames. She was a modern lady. Or she tried her best to live a modern life, but in a non-modernized environment, in a village environment. Ebingakathuthuki futhi kakhulu, but it was making progress kancane kancane. So umakhulu is now widowed and she's jobless and she's raising these kids, and kunzima, it's tough, but she does it. They grow up, and so because she was a teacher, she didn't give her kids a choice. She said, you have to become teachers. You have to do good at school and you have to get the marks, go study higher education, and come back as teachers, right? So that you can live a life that makes sense, okay? The firstborn was like, okay, yeah, I'll follow the teaching route, but then he discovered a church. So now remember, back in the day, bekunama traditional churches kakhulu, or Anglican, or I'm not sure about Methodist, but mainly La Pekala, Begune Shish Anglican Church, right? And so they grew up, my grandfather, Inganza Mphemba, they grew up going to Eshish, the Anglican Church. Shutigu figure, this guy who franchised this new church for the modern crowd, for the young crowd, the Assemblies of God. And so he's now franchising it from the white people in the States, because apparently he traveled to the States. And then usay letha ke manje isizoba yini, isizoba ichurch yabantu abamnyama. Okay. And so he still kept a lot of the traditional elements as the Anglican Church, right? But now it's more hip. There's more music, there's instruments, there's unamatente, and they go and recruit people, they play music. It's just a more flamboyant type church. And so my grandfather takes a liking to it, and he goes and he joins that church. And so that church then takes him to Bible school. Okay, I think it's theology, ne? Bible studies, I don't know. But he goes ayofunda leyo nto leyo through funding of this church. Okay, so uzoba yini? Uzoba mfundisi. Okay, so he is a teacher essentially, just not in the way that Mphemba expected. Okay, but the second born, her other son, he then goes and he qualifies as a teacher. And then Gegushege, the daughter, who also didn't pursue teaching. So to cut a long story short, her firstborn goes to this church and they have conferences and they travel with this church. People come from all different parts of the province and different provinces. And so he meets a lady from, she came from KZN, Pietermaritzburg, right? He meets my grandmother, Umamkwena, at this church, and he takes a liking to her, and they decide that they're going to get married. Now, you guys must remember, Mphemba has had, she's been biting the dust, ne? Because she had to raise these kids with the little that she had. And so she was just waiting for that break where inganzake, they become teachers, they can be independent. And then right? They don't get a lot of abafundis bakdala, they were authentic. They didn't get a lot of money, right? And then again, the second born, he qualifies and becomes a teacher, okay? But then he falls into alcohol, unfortunately. And he just drinks a lot, the area where we come from in the Eastern Cape, there's just a very heavy depressive energy on the youth, and it keeps continuing because the youth is very heavy on the alcohol, like heavy drinking, not like responsible drinking, like heavy drinking. So firstborn gets married, and Yena and the wife, they begin to have kids. Remember, Uti, they don't have a place to stay. It's not like you get married and buy a house. No. And the wife was still studying. She was studying nursing as well. And so they were married. They were having kids. They first I think at the lady's house. And it was like, no, we can't stay here. And then they just moved around. So manje, my grandfather had an issue of moving around with the kids. So he said, you know what? Let's take the kids to my mom. Okay. Because my grandmother also comes from like a dirt poor environment, and it just wasn't conducive for the kids. So he felt like, you know what? Let's take them to my mom. Mphemba is good with kids. Mphemba will do a good job, whilst we try to figure ourselves out. So he goes to his mom. Mom, please take the kids. Mom says, okay, no problem. I'll take your kids. Right? And so that's how my parents, my dad and his siblings, then went to the Eastern Cape, lived in the Eastern Cape for iskashana, and they were raised by Mphemba. Okay. Now the issue comes in here. Remember, with Mphemba now, she's struggling with spiritual afflictions. She knows who sent them. She's psychic. But she doesn't know Uti. Like, how does she openly practice her craft? Because she is shunned in her environment. Upageme, uyini. So the last thing she needs, right, is all the drama and the heat that comes with her saying, hey, so okay, but not igqirha enlaziyo nina. I am a psychic medium. No, she couldn't do that. As much as the calling came, empilweni yakhe, she rejected the calling, and she was a subject of a lot of spiritual bullying, ichitho, and then eventually wafakelwa ilumbo kahle kahle elagcina limthathile. So on top of being a victim ichitho from her in-laws or ama siblings husband yakhe, umakhulu, she's looking after her firstborn son's children. And so she advises him, ukuthi, Xolisi, listen, your kids, they're growing up. You have kids now. You're a man. You're a husband even. Yenzela abantwana imbeleko, because you have imbeleko as a Xhosa man. I don't have a problem with you and this new church, but you cannot throw away amasiko kaXhosa. You have to do imbeleko for abantwana. So again, my grandfather goes to his wife, Mamkwena, and advises her of this. And Mamkwena is like a heavy follower of this church, of this new Assemblies of God, this new movement. They said Back to God movement, whatever it is. Linda Babeyenza, taking people away from amasikabo and saying, Guti God, uThixo akawafuna amasikabo. All these years, all of a sudden, it just irks me. It irks me. But anyways, he goes to his wife. His wife, she says, no, we're Christian, we saved, we don't do that. Go back to your mom and tell her that we no longer practice culture. We have our own new tradition of being saved. Okay, so it's a no-no, right? So Mxolisi goes back, informs his mom, and so Mphemba requests a meeting with them as a couple, as a married couple. And so she wanted to speak to the wife, right? And it was this conversation that opened an entire can of worms that Umakhulu did not expect. So Umakhulu, remember Umakhulu is a scholar. She's learned. She's here. Right? She's not just a village gogo who has no clue what's going on. She's very clued up, right? And she's also a Xhosa lady who believes and upholds Xhosa traditions. And she says that ingane mazenzelwe imbeleko. That's now my dad and his siblings. So she has a conversation with the wife, Mamkwena, and Mamkwena expresses to her, ukuthi no, thina sesindisiwe azenze lezi zinto zamasiko ABCD. And Umakhulu said to her, when she explained this to me, I was like, Makhulu, are you serious? She said to her, so I get that you now follow this new culture or this new tradition of being saved Christian. But your husband, before he became all of that, he was a Xhosa man, being raised by a traditional Xhosa mom, and he had imbeleko done. And you found him so incredibly attractive. You fell in love with this man who had imbeleko done to the point where you wanted him to be your husband. And you didn't stop there. You then went on to have kids by him. So it didn't matter to you that he had imbeleko done when it was serving you, because you were now in love with this traditional Xhosa man. But now that you're married and you want to push your own agenda, you're telling the traditional Xhosa man to move away from his traditions and the traditions that protected him throughout his childhood, because I was a widow raising him, are now too low for you as a saved Christian. They are now not of value, but those traditions ensured that they give you a husband who's well put together, who's handsome, who you fell in love with, who you are still in love with. And Umakhulu said, explain to me that logic. So Mamkwena then realized, oh my gosh, okay, no, she's not just a clueless Makhulu from the village. She's actually here. This lady is going to be a problem in my marriage. This lady is going to be a problem in my marriage, you know. And so, here's the crazy part, right? That threw me completely off guard when Umakhulu revealed it to me. Here's a question I have for those of you who identify as saved Christians who do not practice tradition or culture, right? Or who do not engage in traditional cultural practices. Because manje kushuthi you saved from your culture, from your traditions, ngoba what? Asingama curses, sekumoya omubi, right? Lawo ma traditions and cultural practices laid the foundation for your very existence namhlanje. Kodwa-ke, that's a topic for a later episode. So-ke, kwenzeka kanjani for you guys to go and consult traditional healers? Kodwa nibe nithi ni saved akufunekanga nzenze lezi zinto, anizenzi. You guilt trip people for going to traditional healers. You label them and judge them uthi bana mademoni. They're demonic, they're evil. But nina emakhonjini niyahamba niyolanda lezi zinto. So do you see ukuthi you don't even believe in lento le nilandelayo nina self, you believe in tradition and culture because udinga umuthi. So ufuna umuntu ukusebenzele. That was the case with my grandmother. Shocker, because I know her as a saved Christian lady who upholds these Christian values. And the fact that she even confirmed after she passed on, Mphemba, I was just like, I don't know how I feel about you right now. Because, Haibo, the gimmick that you put up, the facade you put up for us is cooler. It's not make sure. But anyways, so in realizing ukuthi Mphemba is not a gogo to be played with, right? She is wise. She is smart. She has wit, you know. She went to go see a traditional healer. My gogo, umamkwen. She went to go see a traditional healer. And she then explained to the traditional healer, ukuthi, yay! I've got a problem. Or she received advice from a friend of hers who said, "Ay, hamba ubona traditional healer wena, ususele umama lo, uzophazamisa umshado wakho." So she went. She took the advice of the friend. She went, a saved Christian angel in secret, and a traditional healer yamnikeza iyeza ekuthiwa ngudelunina. And that is iyeza that umakhulu cannot stand till today. And not just udelunina, anything that has to do with love magic, love potions, manipulating a person's free will, right, to do your will. She can't stand it. So she gets to Delunina. She's told to administer it to her husband and basically instruct him ukuthi magadele kwanina loyo, and he must just focus on her and do as she says, yada 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 yada. Fast forward, all of a sudden, umakhulu stops seeing her son. They go to the village, they collect their children. My grandfather and his wife, they collect the children and they leave with the children, never to return to the Eastern Cape to see umakhulu. So I asked my dad, how? Manje, ukhula, awuzibuzweni ukuthi kanti wayesingayi kwagogo, wayesingabuyeli kwagogo, ababuza abazali ukuthi wayesingabuyeli kwagogo. Because he was mentioning, ukuthi ugogo wakho wamgcina emncane inini. I'm like, why don't you go visit your grandmother? You know? And all he said was, all I know was that we can't go to the Eastern Cape because they are not saved and they don't follow inkolo yala ekhaya, and so our parents don't want to expose us to them. Your parents don't want to expose you to your grandmother because she's a traditional Xhosa woman. Crazy. Niyabona ukuthi into nje enobuthakathi, illogic yakhona is just null and void. It's just completely devoid of common sense. Completely devoid of common sense. Like the reasoning is just out of this world crazy. But my grandfather lived out his days with his wife, not going to see his family, not going to see his mom. His mom passed on, Mphemba, she died a very painful death. She had all kinds of spiritual afflictions. And she was bedridden. Nobody cared about her. When she passed on, yawa nendlu eventually kwashiyeka nje ikhona encinci. Nobody cared. Nobody cared because she was an outcast in the community, because she's apparently uppity. She was an outcast in the family, to the point where when we wanted to know more about uMakhulu, right, as izukulwana sakhe, and we are now asking the family that's there, that stems from the sisters, that stems from the previous wife, they were not forthcoming with the information kaMakhulu. And when we found her grave, she was not even buried next to her husband. You guys will not believe that her kids are closer to her husband, who died after her, than she is. Her husband's kids. She was buried by the fence as an outcast. Ukuthi she's an outcast. So she was mistreated right up until her dying day, and even after her dying day. And even in her death, she was still mistreated and bullied. And so she cannot stand spiritual bullies. She cannot stand amadliso at all. Okay? And those are the things that she fights. Gakulu. She fights ubuthakathi, you know? And she doesn't only fight, she teaches, she educates, which is the whole point of the Healing Podcast, uGogo Mphemba. You are here to learn about your spiritual makeup so that when you heal, you understand what is happening, you understand what you're doing, and you find the most effective healing method for you as an individual. Because no two human beings are the same. No two ancestors are the same or have the same MO. So it all comes with understanding, with the wisdom that she imparts on us. Ukuthi ubuthakathi does not pay. There are consequences and they are generational. Do you see? Nami, her coming to me, right? And me having this calling that she now required me to answer. It's a generational issue that needed to be resolved because Gwayena, she didn't accept her calling. Ngobani, because she was a victim of spiritual bullying. And she was crippled with the fear of ukuthi bazomenzani. She's widowed, bazobenzani abantwana bakhe. So now she had to live a life unaligned with her purpose, and she was miserable. Her happiness was snatched away from her as a young person who just wanted to lead a modern lifestyle and give her children a better life than she had. But because umuntu uba conceited and umuntu focuses on what you're doing, and because they're not doing much for themselves, instead of uplifting themselves, or instead of asking you ukuthi wenza kanjani yazi ngiyafisa ukufika kule level okuyo, they would rather bring you down. And we're going to get into all of that in my episodes of this podcast. She shares so much vital information about the energies that we are subject to. And she focuses a lot on the modern crowd, you as a modern person, right? Because she does not want you to feel segregated from the spiritual realm. She does not want you to believe Guti spirituality is not for you. African spirituality is not for you. It is for you. It is for you. You just need the understanding so that you understand the power that you possess. Because the bullies need you in a state where you believe that I don't have power, I'm a victim, I'm this, that, and the other, so that they can have a field day with you. So now she's going to teach you, she's going to empower you with the spiritual tools that you need as a spiritual being, having a physical experience in this physical realm. And also, so that you live a life that is aligned, so that you live your purpose. Ukuze nawe, when you pass on and you become a spirit guide and an ancestor, you are a powerful one. And you can now come back and empower the next generation to do more, to be better, to be the best, in fact. Okay. So that is why uMakhulu is so adamant and so aggressive when it comes to ubuthakathi in general, but more specifically, amadliso ney'chitho. You have no business ukuchitha impilo yomuntu or omunye umuntu. Focus on building eyakhe impilo. Don't focus on ukuchitha yomunye umuntu. And then it's siyanthuka masithi ngama low life man thakatha. But you're the one who wants to make sure that everybody is living at low level. When you see people climbing higher, you're irked. We are shy. Because the mindset, your focus. Tune into this podcast. It is going to help you refocus. It is going to help realign you. Shift your mindset. Realign your mindset. So that we see a collective shift in this paradigm. In this day and age. We have so much at our disposal. As a young crowd. As the youth of today. We have the kind of resources Mphemba could only dream of. Kodwa siyathakatha. There is so much more that we could be doing to empower ourselves and to live an extraordinary life. There's a lot, and it does not involve ubuthakathi. So tune into this podcast. If you are young and you're modern, and especially if you're African, this is a podcast you do not want to miss. All right, I'm going to end it there. Because right. I'm going to end it there. I hope that uMakhulu sharing her story is an eye-opener for a lot of you about your life journey and what it should look like, what it could look like. Should you be an empowered, spiritual human being? Empowered, high vibrational. I'll catch you guys in the second installment of the Healing Podcast with uGogo Mphemba. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you are enlightened. May you heal and may your healing be absolute and profound. CAMAGU.